All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome in to our virtual space here. And I'm realizing that my camera isn't on. Oh my goodness. Let's get everything going. I apologize. We are having some technical issues today. And so welcome. We are going to adapt and overcome to our technical difficulties. And it looks like my video has been disabled. So either Mariah or Helen, would you all mind enabling it or not? You can just listen to my voice today. Okay, great. Let me try one more time. All right, there I am. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Suzanne Spear. I'm the Senior Director of Workforce Development here at ACU. Really glad you are with us today. It looks like most folks have connected in to their audio, and so we are going to go ahead and get started. Next slide, please. All right, so as I mentioned, I'm Suzanne Spear, and I am joined along with an amazing team. So you have all 5 of us today. And so with us, again, is Dr. Michelle Fernandez Gabilondo, and she is our Associate Director of Workforce Development. We have Mariah Blake, who is our Senior Program Associate. And also, next slide. We have our 2 amazing training specialists, Helen Ray Vernier, as well as Alex Rollwing. And so our entire team, all 5 of us, we're a part of the STAR Center and really glad you are with us today. So who is ACU? Well, I bet a lot of you all know us and know who ACU is, but for those of you who aren't familiar with ACU and our overall work, I will give you a quick overview. So ACU, or the Association of Clinicians for the Underserved, is a national membership organization. We were started about 25 years ago by alumni of the National Health Service Corps. We have changed quite a bit over those 25 years, but our mission remains the same, and that is access to care for historically marginalized and underserved populations, as well as the support of clinicians who are serving those marginalized and underserved populations. We have a whole host of programs that you can find on ACU's website, which is clinicians.org, but I'll tell you about just a few of them. So we have a suicide safer care training prevention program for both staff members as well as patients. We have a vision services program to add vision services to scope of work at health centers, as well as a variety of different other programs, but the one that we're here to talk about today is our National Training and Technical Assistance Partner Cooperative Agreement that we have through the Bureau of Primary Health Care. We call that program our STAR Center, which stands for Solutions, Training, and Assistance for Recruitment and Retention. We were originally funded about 8 years ago, so we are in our 9th year of our work, and we are one of those 21 training and technical assistance partners that we each serve a niche area of the health center program. And you guessed it, our niche area is workforce recruitment and retention at health centers. Next slide. All right, just some housekeeping items. So we are here and the session is being recorded and it will be sent out to each one of you who has registered. So feel free to listen or share it broadly. Feel free to use the chat box to ask questions as you need to or would like to, or even just share comments as we're going along. Towards the end, we will be having a discussion time, and so, but don't feel like you need to wait to the end to ask questions or to just put any comments or things like that in the chat box. So feel free to do that. If you're having any technical difficulties, Mariah Blake, that you were quickly introduced to earlier, she is our technical person that's on this call. And so if you're experiencing any technical difficulties, feel free to direct message her or email her at mblake@clinicians.org. We would also appreciate it if you would complete the evaluation at the end of the session. We want to know how we're doing and how we can improve for next time. All right, next slide, please. All right, so what is the purpose of this workforce professional development series? Well, I'm glad you asked, because we have been doing this for several years now, and it's changed a little bit. But really, we are here to help provide a space for professional development as well as collaboration to support the recruitment and retention efforts at health centers, as well as to give primary care association workforce staff a place where they can go and get professional development to help health centers do and really improve their workforce efforts. Next slide, please. All right, so how are we going to accomplish this? Well, obviously we're here to give some topics on professional development and let it serve as train the trainer for those at PCAs and HCCNs and other organizations that support health centers, so that you can understand some broad topics that are really affecting workforce recruitment and retention at health centers, as well as resources that we have here at the STAR Center. We're also going to be building our networks, right? So we're going to be building a community of workforce leaders, both at PCAs and HCCNs and health centers, to be comfortable leading and supporting one another as we go throughout this series. You may not be able to attend all of these sessions, but as you are, you will probably get to know one another just a little bit. Most of the same folks will be here each time. And so really building a community that we can lean each other for support and ideas. I know I always learn something when I do a training, even though, I'm the one that's mainly disseminating information, but I always learn from other folks, and I know you all will as well. All right, so we're also going to be keeping folks informed. So as a workforce leader and or a trainer at your organization, you are going to benefit from knowing what your colleagues are experiencing and also hearing about promising practices, both from the STAR Center staff. You won't always be hearing from me on these sessions, but from the STAR Center staff, as well as some other health centers, as I mentioned in the previous note about building a community. And then finally, we are going to be bringing you inspiration. So, these conversations that we have, these topics that we talk about, it is our hope that it's going to energize the work that you're doing either in direct patient care, in HR, whatever your role is at your health center, or as a PCA and HCCN, that it will really invigorate you to go out and help your health centers do this work as well. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so next we are going to do some Mentimeter questions. So before we switch over to the Mentimeter slide, want you all to either put your phone up to the QR code or open up a new tab to menti.com and enter 7707-9582. So menti.com 7707-9582. All right.
And if I will jump over to that as soon as the screen shows up. Perfect.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, team. We have the whole team is helping out today with all the technical difficulties. Awesome, thank you, Alex. Okay, so the first question is, for what organization do you work? So we have 10 PCAs, we have 10 SQHCs, and then I'm looking forward to seeing who else we have in the room in the chat. If you wouldn't mind just putting it in the chat in the Zoom, that would be great. All right. All right, so you're coming from New Hampshire. Okay, great. Wonderful. All right. All right, an NTAP. Awesome. Look at all these places that folks are coming in. They're also putting from where they are. Hawaii, Rhode Island, New Hampshire. Awesome. Welcome. So glad you're here. Okay. Atlanta, Georgia. Awesome. All right. I think we're ready for the next Mentimeter slide. Maryland, Long Island, Oregon, Hershey, Pennsylvania. Awesome. Great. All right. So how long have you been involved at workforce at your organization? Doesn't matter whether you're at a PCA or a FQHC, how long have you been doing workforce? All right, so we have some, okay, FQHC lookalike. Great, perfect, wonderful, thank you. All right, so we have a really wonderful spread of time in position, time in a role. So we have a lot of people who are brand new to their job. Welcome, we are so glad you're here. And we're also so glad that we have some folks that have been doing this for a while, right? So either in their job for 1 to 3 years, 3 to 5 years, or more than 5 years. And so we hope that as we go on through the series with today, as well as the next 3 sessions, that you all will be sharing your expertise. And for those of you who are new, feel free to ask questions. This is a space filled with grace, and so we are here to learn from each other, right? It's not just the person that's speaking, it is learning from each other. It's so important that we just have a community of learning, and so we're really excited that we have such a wonderful spread of tenure at organizations. All right, thank you for that. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about manager training plans at organizations. So I'd love to know and just get a pulse, there's no wrong answer, on folks' knowledge about manager training plans. So first, do you know or do you have an expert? Are you an expert in managing training plans? Do you know a little bit about training plans? Do you know a fair amount? Or what in the world is a manager training plan? And this will just help us as we, as I go along today. Awesome. Okay. All right. So again, a good spread. Some folks don't know what a manager training plan might be or what it might look like. And then some folks do maybe know a little bit about it. So great. Well, I'm so glad you're here and really excited to chat with you about manager training plans. And I think that one will come up next, Alex. And so let's stop sharing our Mentimeter. We'll come back to that in a little bit after we've done some didactic portion, and we'll find out what folks are training on in their training plans. Okay, I'm gonna get a sip of water. And we are going to dive into our topic for today, which is manager training. Next slide, please. All right, so for those of you who have been around the STAR Center for any length of time, you have probably seen this slide. Well, when we talk about workforce at the STAR Center, we talk about workforce being the fuel for our health center operations. And so each health center is going to look different, right? You've seen one health center, you've seen one health center. But at the core of what you do, everything is going to fit into, when it comes to workforce, they're going to really fit into these core components. And for each one of these components, if you have a full tank of gas, if you will, right, full tank of fuel, then your health center is going to really be high performing and high functioning. And so we talk a lot about various different options, or these various different buckets, as I call them at the STAR Center. But what we're going to be focusing on today are high functioning managers. And high functioning managers are extremely important. They make such a difference in health center operations, in the employee relations, a bunch of different things. And so if you have high functioning managers at your health center, it is really going to set you up for success, both from your day-to-day, your patients, and your employee engagement. Next slide, thank you. All right, so why do we need high functioning managers, and why do we need a manager training plan? Well, managers play a significant role in the retention of employees and the overall employees experience. And over the last several years, I bet you have really seen a lot about the Great Resignation. I know some folks don't like to talk, that they don't really like that phrase, but a lot of folks have changed jobs. A lot of folks are going to continue to change jobs. And so here's some stats to think about when we're thinking about the why should we develop a manager training plan, right? Why should we invest our time? Why should we do this? Why is this something that our organization needs to do as a health center? And why, as a PCA, do we need to help our health centers do this? Well, 57% of workers say that they have quit a job because of a bad boss. And for those who have stayed, 1/3 have seriously considered leaving because of their boss, right? So people don't leave jobs, they leave bosses, right? So more than a half. 50% of employees feel that their own performance would improve if their boss received the right kind of manager training. That is huge, right? So if their manager was more educated and empowered in certain areas, then it would really help them do their job better. And then finally, and this one's it's a little darker, but I also thought it was important to share that 30% of folks said that their managers are toxic, actively undermining the efficacy, dignity, and ultimately self-worth of employees. That is a big deal, folks. Managers are truly a make or break when it comes to employee retention and employee engagement. So as we go along, just keep those stats in mind and really just, I know we all know it, but it's really good to ground it in some stats there. Next slide, please. All right, so as we know, managers are important. They have huge effects on their employees and retention, and they receive and have a significant, managers have a significant amount of input on the employee experience, like we just saw, right? And so the input that they receive is from, everything that they're working on to what's going on day to day, a various bunch of things. So, and when we think about manager training plans and managers in general, are managers guided and recognizing their employees? Or are they reprimanding and stressing their employees out, right? Are the lines of communication between managers and employees open to share ideas? Or do employees feel that they could get in trouble for asking questions? I know that sounds silly, but it really is an issue at some places. And so when we think about managers, think about how they can really become your most important ambassadors for employee retention. Next slide, please. All right, so again, there's a lot on this slide and we won't go through all of it, but I wanted to share some that really jumped out at me, right? So when we're thinking again about manager training plans and what it can accomplish, let's dive in and talk a little bit about several of these 7 that are on here, right? So if we think about, enabling a strong company culture, right? When we think about leaders going first, yeah, that's right. But if we really want to think about the biggest places for growth, it really is sort of a moving to the middle, which is really the managers. And the managers, when we talk about managers, it's, sort of middle management there. And oftentimes, this is where the biggest opportunity lies, right? Similarly, that leadership is really owning the strategy and really driving the strategy, right? So they're the ones that are beholden to the boards that are developing these strategic plans in most cases. But it is the managers that are owning the tactics, and then they're the ones who transform what's on a piece of paper or on a computer screen and really transform it into results. So think about that, right? So the top management, the C-suite is putting this together. Hopefully it's a collaborative effort, but a lot of times they're the ones that are responsible for it. But the managers are responsible for really putting it into action. So that's another important part to think about. All right, so, and then when we think about really increasing self-awareness, really think about those folks that receive regular training tend to be more self-aware. Now, not always, but those folks that do receive more training, especially when it comes to soft skills that we'll talk a little bit about in a minute, that they tend to be better coaches for those that they supervise, those that they oversee, and they can really pass that on to help the folks that they supervise be more self-aware. And then finally, to reach their full potential, everyone needs development. Learning is, we learn from the time that we were born until the time that we are no longer, breathing from our lungs. And so it's important to remember that this is an important part of just being, and, not only just being and living and being a part of your health center or the health centers that you work with. Next slide, please. All right. And so why else should you build a manager training plan? Well, turnover is expensive. And so I know folks have seen this slide a lot, but it really is expensive. And so by investing in our managers and therefore increasing employee engagement and hopefully reducing turnover, it will be less expense for our health centers. And if you need a place to look exactly at dollars and cents, we do have a financial assessment tool that will really showcase the amount that losing staff can really have on your bottom line there. Next slide, please. All right, so let's kind of dive back into this, this idea and this concept of high-functioning managers. Now, in a high-functioning environment, leadership is going to provide training and data to their managers, right? So it starts from the top. So they're going to talk about all different kinds of things and also data, information to managers. Then managers are going to provide development to staff and also communicating to those two parties, right? So in that previous slide that looks like a wheel, managers really are often that go-between between senior leadership and the staff in which they supervise, right? And so if you have the communication to both of those parties, everyone is engaged and everyone is, there's a higher chance of retaining them. So when we set our vision on that kind of environment, it will help us identify some really high impact strategies to support those managers, who in turn can also have an impact on all of the work that we're doing. And frankly, it just makes it a better place to walk into every single day. All right, next slide, please. Thank you. So managers do well to really set the tone of an engaged culture. So one of the things that we touched on in that slide that had all of those 7 different things, managers really set the tone for an engaged culture, right? And so they are going to engage the staff in which they supervise. They are going to create a learning environment, right? And so if a manager is more likely to engage in training on a regular basis, then they are more likely to create that learning environment for those in which they supervise. And it's going to help with that engaged culture foster, again, that two-way communication. And so, again, when we think about managers and that middle management and also the C-suite, but really here, when we think about the middle managers, they are the glue that keeps everything together. And most often, they are the ones that need the most training because they are a lot of times promoted into their positions. And so think about that our middle managers and our managers here are really the glue that really sets the tone for your engaged culture. And also, they create that dynamic workplace where employees feel like they're able to do that and their opinions are being heard, because with that engaged culture, they feel free to share opinions. They hear things from their manager and then they share things back to their manager. And then in an ideal situation, that those managers would then go back to the C-suite and have that conversation. Now, I will not say that C-suite should be completely out of this, right? C-suite should be a part of these conversations regularly, but often C-suite are not the folks that interact with every single person on a daily basis. And it's not that they're just like removed and they sit in their office and they shouldn't be a part of these conversations, but middle managers are the ones who have a direct line of communications to those that they supervise on a daily basis. And so C-suite might only have, once monthly or once a quarter meetings with all staff. And so those managers are, again, those who interact with our staff every single day, and they really can make a difference when it comes to building that engaged culture. Next slide, please. All right. And so I wanted to show this because it was actually made by my colleague Michelle, who you'll hear from later on in the series, and I thought it was really poignant here, right? Because when it comes to management and leaders, I truly believe that managers can also be leaders within the organization, right? Even if they're not when it comes to C-suite or things like that. It is something that they can do both, and really here, this intersection when it comes to this middle, this light blue that's on my screen is light blue in the middle. So doing things like motivating staff, execute the mission. Remember, we talked about that earlier, right? They explain the vision, and they also bring out the best in staff. So when we think about that middle management and what their role is, it is crucial this is just another way to reiterate how crucial managers are to employee retention and really being a vital role at health centers. Next slide, please. All right, so when we think about manager training plans, why we should do them, really, well, then the next question is what? What skills do managers need? And they can be defined as hard or technical skills. And then also on the other side of the coin are soft skills, or I also call those people skills as well. All right, next slide, please. All right, so let's move on let's talk about some hard skills, right? So when we think about management and hard skills, we think about things like strategic planning, right? Setting the big vision for the organization. And again, this might start at C-suite, but it really also should include some planning and some training around strategic planning for managers. I know that, again, there are a lot of times where health center staff are, they come into their role, and they are they don't have really any experience with higher level management, and so really taking a deeper dive around strategic planning is important. Also, data analysis, data. It is so important. HRSA loves data, BIPIC loves data, and it is crucial to be able to understand what things mean. Now, data analysis could take on various different things when it comes to turnover or patient numbers, or there's a ton of different data that we look at health centers. And so providing data analysis training, so for both formal data analysis training as well as informal data analysis training and how you use data at your health centers every day, that's really important. Computer software, right? Technology, we can love it, we can hate it, it can be wonderful sometimes, it cannot be so wonderful sometimes, as you experienced earlier with our late start today. But it is really important to what we do every day. And again, software. EHRs are a huge burden for a lot of folks, and at all levels. And so by having the proper training and an ongoing and regular basis, it really can relieve some of that stress. Not all of it, but it can relieve some stress if folks understand and know how to use the programs that they're asked to use. Because oftentimes we have to use 4 or 5 programs on the same, on a daily basis. And so really understanding how to use that software, again, so they can also help folks when they come to them with questions, and really understanding that is really important too. Budgeting. This is a big one. Again, a lot of managers come into their jobs and they have never had to think about a budget before. It's just, I get paid every day or paid every 2 weeks, and the health center's lights are on, right? And so really thinking about budgeting is another really core technical skill for a manager to learn, and really understand what components of the budgets that they need to be responsible for is something else to think about, right? So understanding of the overall budget, but then also the budgeting that really they need to be responsible for is something to think about. And then again, project management. This is going to vary from department to department, job to job, all of that, but really understanding how to take a project and execute it so that there are minimal delays, that there are minimal disruptions, and so that things go smoothly. And so these are just some of the things that we can think about when it comes to our technical skills. Now, again, there might be some more that you all do on a regular basis or as a PCA that you have training for your health centers on, but just really something to think about when it comes to your technical skills. All right. And then on the other side of the coin, it comes to soft skills. And these are just like I said, our people skills. And we're not going to go into all of these today, but I wanted to show you really what they could look like. And so, or really all that they encompass. And again, just like with the technical skills or the hard skills, these are just a few that we think about, but a lot of these things that stand out to me that we're going to be talking about in the next slide. And so, adaptability, leadership, critical thinking, problem solving, performance feedback, communication. These are all things to think about when we think about our people skills, if you will. Next slide, please. All right, so, and again, these are the ones that we're really going to dive in today. And those people skills are really important, and how they interact on an everyday basis and really manage the folks that they are responsible for, leading them at their organization. So again, as we saw in the last slide, there are a ton of soft skills that we could talk about. But for the purposes of our conversation today, we're going to focus on these categories. So communication, teamwork and performance feedback, adaptability, and also empathy. Next slide, please. All right. So now in real estate, the important catchphrase, or something you hear often when we think about real estate, is location, location, location. And when it comes to managers, I would say that one of the most important things here is communication, communication, communication. I talk about it all the time and with my team, and it's something that I can't stress enough here. So if there is one thing that, if you have to focus on one thing when it comes to managers in regards to training, I would say that this is vastly the most important when it comes to those softer people skills. It's the foundation for virtually everything you do and everything your health centers do, and also the things that managers do on a day-to-day basis. So if we focus in on teaching managers how to have continuous two-way communications with the people that they manage, it's really going to be crucial to the engagement and the retention of the employees, just like we heard at the very beginning of the presentation today. So the frequency and form of communication is going to vary from manager to manager and employee to employee, right? So the type of communication, the frequency, all of that is going to vary. And I will say that we need to pay attention to that and also be receptive to what folks want, right? Because everyone is not going to be the same, but we need to make sure that it is happening on a regular basis for success. Now, this is, I wouldn't say easier, but it's more intuitive for folks that are in person. But you might have some managers that are managing people that are remote. And so think about the different ways that we need to train for and engage in communication that isn't in person, right? So I know that my team here, and I know that we are a national organization, we're not patient facing, right? But my team is all remote. And so figuring out a way that works for all of us, and frankly, individually how it works, is going to be different than someone who is in the same physical space. But I would also, before we move on from this, and I mentioned this a second ago, make sure that you're talking to your team, right? And folks that manage people are talking to their team and they really understand how it is that they want to be communicated with. Some people, they always want face-to-face. They always want one-on-one time, right, in the same space. Some people need an email, right? Some people want a text. Whatever it is, really look and see what options there are and really engage in those from person to person, and how it works best for them. Next slide, please. All right, so our next skills that I've grouped together here are teamwork and performance feedback. And the reason I have grouped them together is because teams are really crucial to what we do, right? There's no I in team, and to accomplish everything we do at health centers and also as PCAs assisting health centers, right? It is important and crucial to what we do in the FQHC world. And also performance feedback is crucial for those individuals serving on those teams, right? And so employees really need to know how they're doing in their job on tasks, both large and small, right? And also when it comes to feedback, getting that macro level feedback as well as that micro level feedback. Feedback leads to employee engagement, collaboration with the manager and the rest of the team on those expected outcomes. And it also motivates the employees to do their best, right? If I don't know how I'm doing on a project and, it's months and months before I get any feedback, or even weeks and weeks, I'm less edified, right? I don't feel as good about what I'm doing. But if someone says, good job, or thanks so much, this is looking great, or whatever the case may be, it really is important as we are going throughout our work. And so by training your managers to assist the employees by being their best selves in each position, doesn't matter what it is, everyone at a health center is going to win. Next slide, please. The next soft skill or people skill that we have here today is adaptability. Now, this is a little more tricky to teach, as some folks are just not as adaptive, and they just don't like change as much as others. However, this skill, along with a lot of the others that we're talking about when it comes to these people skills, are something that can be learned with proper and adequate training. So in the ever-changing healthcare landscape, especially in the last 3 years, it is another important skill to learn. And I will say that when we think about adaptability, health centers have done this amazingly well and have really done this. But it is a skill, and it was especially showcased how much this skill was needed in March of 2020, so almost 3 years ago. And so really having this as a personal skill is really, really important, right? And so, when a pandemic happens or when a new initiative comes down from HRSA, we need to be able to have our managers to be able to execute within our teams as if it had always been there. And again, I will say that this has been done beautifully and probably without a lot of training, but also not only training, but just the awareness that that things are ever changing, and that what we're doing today might not be the very same thing that we're going to do tomorrow, or the same procedure, and those procedures might change. Next slide. So empathy. Empathy is another crucial soft skill for managers, right? So we're all people that come to work, not workers that are also people, right? It's really important for us to see the people that we work with every single day, whether or not we are in a management position. We are all people. And I tell this to my team personally all the time, right? And so we are people first, and whatever our title is second, right? And so remember that empathy is really going to go a long way, right? So we all come to our jobs with different backgrounds, different needs, different emotions, all of those things that go along outside of working hours. And also some of us have more things that are going on in our personal lives than others. And so when we think about empathy, And so when we think about empathy, we really need to be thinking about increasing our empathy for others. And when we do that, our managers increase their ability to work alongside and motivate everybody on their team, right? So when we see people first, that motivation and that intrinsic just desire to do better really comes a long way. And so really having our managers really understand and really act this out is really very important. And this, along with our adaptability, is also can be thought about as a muscle that gets stronger with each practice. So again, might not be intuitive, it might not be something that folks are naturally good at, but with practice, we really can make it better. All right, so think about, these are just some examples of training topics when it comes to more of those soft skills. And so some of these include giving performance feedback and acknowledges of positive contributions as well as positive outcomes. And we want to also let our employees know when one of their suggestions has been acted on rather, and also we want to reward employees for ideas that save us money, right? And so thinking about that, it not only makes you feel good, but it, from a personal perspective, but also that they're contributing to a larger organizational win, right? And so it's going to inspire our employees to discover ways that are more efficient to do their job, and also it creates employee loyalty within an organization, right? And so, again, all of these things can really, really be valuable, really different training topics within an organization. Next slide, please. All right, so when should we do manager training? This is a great question. Well, there's only 3 things here, and so it's not as much of a circle as I'd hoped visually for it to be. But first of all, we want to be doing our manager training when we are doing onboarding or our new hire, as a part of our new hire process, right? And so onboarding can be either when they're first step in the door of an organization or when they are promoted to that position, right? So as I mentioned before, a lot of managers, a lot of middle management have come from other parts of an organization where they weren't responsible for managing anyone else. It was just them being and doing their job. And so thinking about that as part of our new hire or onboarding process to a specific position. Then it should be something that is thought about annually, right? As a part of our annual review process, thinking about professional development goals, or just other things that they want to think in and really think on and be a part of. It's really important to think about and revisit on an annual basis, really setting that North Star on an annual basis. But also it should be an ongoing thing, right? It's not something that we should do when they're hired or they're promoted and then annually. It should be something that we think about on an ongoing basis. I know here at the STAR Center, we're always sending each other links to webinars or trainings, just like being here. I bet you that this is something, professional development that you saw and you're like, hey, I want to do that. And so this is what we mean about ongoing basis. Training should not be something that is thought about every once in a while. It should be thinking and all the time and in a continual basis, but really visited more formally on an annual basis. All right, so let's go back to Menti. And so it's actually that same QR code and the same Menti thing. So Alex is going to share it there. And so as we think about all of the different topics that, and y'all, a bunch of you are already answered this, so thank you. So when we think about manager training, either within your organization, if you are an FQHC, or if you are a PCA and you interact with your health centers, obviously on a regular basis, what topic does your organization or organizations that you work with do a good job of training managers on, right? Communication, love it. Teamwork, And oh, and by the way, sorry, I didn't explain this before. You can pick multiple ones. You don't just have to pick one. And I love this. What is coming out the most right now is empathy and interpersonal relationships. That is amazing. I'm so glad to see it. It's so needed. And then also adaptability, teamwork, and communication. Wow, this is actually, I'm actually really surprised, to be honest, at this, because that empathy and those interpersonal relationships is so important. And I'm really, really glad to see it, because I know communication and teamwork and giving that constructive feedback, it's really important. But I love the fact that so many of your organizations, either your own personal organizations or those that you work with, are really doing a great job of training on that empathy and interpersonal relationships. Okay, next slide, please. Oops, we missed one. Would you mind going back to the last one? Okay, so since somehow in the chat, another technical difficulty that we're having over here, I would love if in the chat, if there are things that you all have seen that maybe you're not doing a great job of training managers on. So do you need to do more on teamwork and feedback? Do you need more on adaptability? What about communication? What is it that you feel that you're, as an organization or your health centers in your state, what do they need more training on? And it actually could be something that's not on this list. Feel free to put it in chat okay, cool. All right, just overall leadership, right? How to be a better leader, how to be an effective leader, Rima. All right. You see, more on feeling empowered to give feedback to management. Oh, I really like that one. Challenging conversations and conflict resolution. Yes, we are all people and we don't always have the same ideas. And so those challenging conversations can be really important. Okay. And so someone said, I think we need more on all of these topics, where to start first, right? And I would say maybe communication. That's definitely something to think about. Okay, how to have difficult conversations, having those hard conversations. Autonomy to make decisions. Ooh, I like that one, yes. And that's also, I think that's also a big one, Jennifer, who put that in the chat, because again, so many of those folks that are middle management have come from positions where they didn't have to make decisions. And so maybe they just are, you know, not really well-versed in making those decisions. Motivational interviewing, yes, great. Adaptability and feedback, communication, yes. And I will say this, so Shannon shared in the chat that the amount of communication that people receive is overwhelming, and yes, 100%, both inside the workplace and in our personal lives, we receive a lot of communication. Yes, so what is important? Managing for performance, challenging directly and caring personally. Ooh, I like that, managing for performance. Challenging directly and caring personally, radical candor concepts. Awesome. That's great. Awesome. Well, thank you all for sharing all of the things that you all feel that you're doing a good job at, and also some things that you really feel as an organization you really need to offer those training opportunities for your managers. All right, and I think we can go back to our slide deck, please. Thank you, Alex, for sharing, and Helen for bringing up the, okay. All right, so we're back to our PowerPoint now. And so when we think about all of those different types of manager training plans and maybe what you're doing well and what you're not doing well, all of this should really inform the development of a manager training plan. And so here at the STAR Center, we have come up with an example of a manager training plan. Next slide, please. And so what this manager training plan really showcases is just it's just like an action plan. Think of this as an action plan for manager training, right? And we're going to absolutely send this out to you all, and it's not something that is, you know, we're saying that this needs to be verbatim, but we wanted to give you something that can be a place to really start, right? And so thinking about all of the different things, and this is for one person, right? And so we think about what competency do we want folks to have? What resources do we need to offer and to support folks, right? Whether it's going to be in-house or an external certification program or just a one-off training that someone physically goes to. Really, what's the resource? How are they going to accomplish this? Like, is it going to be on their own time? Is it going to be protected administrative time? And then also, too, this is important. When is it going to happen? Is this something that's going to happen, you know, on an ongoing basis? Is it going to happen when they're onboarded? When is it going to happen? And then, as a result, what learning activities are going to happen? And then finally, what impact will these trainings have on our overall health center, right? And again, this is not something that is set in stone, but it just really think about how you can how you can put it, you know, pen to paper and really think about really crafting an individualized training plan. And this is something that can be done once a year and then really changed and added to as we go along. Next slide, please. All right, so we know that creating any sort of plan can be overwhelming, but the first step is to just start. And your manager training plan might not be as in-depth as what we just showed on the last screen, but just writing something down and giving a timeline to it, it might be a part of your annual review. Wherever it is, just start and you will make sure that you can really get it going. All right, next slide, please. All right, and so we don't have too much time to discuss, next slide, but I want to hear from you guys. When do you all conduct manager training at your organization, right? So, or when do health centers in your state conduct manager training? Is this something that is done, and you can feel free to just put it in the chat. Do you do it either as an onboarding or when they first start, or is it something that you do on an ongoing basis? There's no wrong answer, just curious here. Somehow I lost my chat. Okay, at the start. Okay, great. Anybody else do this on an ongoing basis, or do most people do their manager training when folks start? Okay. Okay, and then someone shares at their organization that they're doing it primarily at the point of hire, right? And then any opportunity after that is something that the managers are seeking themselves. It's not something that they do as an organization, right? Annually, and then as folks transition, that's great. And an ongoing basis. I'm so glad to hear this on an ongoing basis. That's wonderful. Yes, perfect. And then someone shared monthly at their supervisor meeting. That's wonderful. I love that. Ongoing professional development, continuous learning. It's so very important. All right. Thank you all for sharing. I really appreciate that. And think about that when you all go back and develop those manager training plans. You know, think about really spacing them out and really giving folks the ability to really engage in learning on an ongoing basis. All right, let's go 2 slides down. All right, and just in the interest of time, we're going to jump to any questions. This has been wonderful, and it's our hope today that you have been able to take away some information about maybe why manager training is important, how you can do manager training, what you can train on, and then how you can create a plan for really putting those plans in action. And then also as a PCA, how you can help your health centers put those manager training plans and put them together so that their managers can be edified in their job. So questions? All right, next slide, please. Since there are no questions, I wanted to let you know that our next session is going to be in just about a month. It's going to be on Thursday, January 19th. Oh, another oopsie today. It's on in 2023 because January 19th, 2022 already happened. So yes, 2023 from 2 to 3 p.m. And we're going to be talking about creating effective job announcements. So this is something that we have been hearing a lot from various organizations that they need help on, and really being creative and really drawing folks in to their organization. So next slide, please. Does ACU have further resources on leadership development? Yes, we do. And actually, in one of the upcoming slides, Rima, we actually have a self-paced course on engaging high-functioning managers for retention, as well as several others. And again, these are just some of our STAR Center resources that we have here. And again, I'll call out the self-paced course on engaging high-functioning managers for retention there. Next slide, please. And with that, as we are learning more and seeing these slides as they go by, we're going to have our evaluation come up. We hope that you found today's session both enjoyable as well as informative, and feel free to contact us with any questions at all. And we would be happy to engage with you and some technical assistance. And we will send that example of our manager training plan out with the slides, or with the recording rather. But it's our hope that, that you will let us know if you have any questions. Hope you have a wonderful afternoon, a great holiday, and we will see you back here in January for our next session on workforce professional development. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great afternoon.